Welcome to the Building a Better You podcast, presented by the Garner Chamber of Commerce Young Professionals. I'm Nick Spindler with Community of Hope Ministries.
And I'm Chris Morgan with Grow Local Realty.
The goal of this podcast is to help young professionals develop and grow into successful business people in their communities.
In each episode, we will talk with local business leaders to provide strategies and tips to help our listeners.
So let's dive right in. Welcome back to Building a Better You. We are sponsored by Coastal Credit Union, and this week we have with us Alan Youngblood from Oak City IT. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Woo!
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do all things tech for small businesses. A lot of us have heard the old adage of a jack of all trades is a master of none. But I think a few people are starting to recognize the full quote, which is actually, but oftentimes better than a master of one. I'm proud to be a generalist. And I've also heard another great term that I'm going to borrow, I guess, for that. It's a systems thinker. And I've been listening to this new podcast, Dr. Nate Hagen's on YouTube. Really fascinating stuff. So he talks about being a systems thinker, and it's kind of understanding how a lot of systems actually act in the first place, interact with each other, and in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do with technology, right? Okay. So small businesses have a lot of needs, and they aren't always, just one thing, right? So you might use some Microsoft services, but you might have an Apple laptop, for instance. So how do those talk to each other? Well, in general, a lot of those things are more compatible than they used to be a while back, but there's a lot of places where you need someone that can help with that. So that's kind of a broad overview. And to get into just an example or two of some projects that I've done recently might help people understand a little bit better what we do. So I've helped a client recently with designing, installing, configuring, and managing a software version control system. This is a video game developer, and so they're writing code, they're creating art and music and sound effects, and they have all these files. So this system is basically the storage for all of those files, and it keeps older versions, so they can say, oh, well, we kind of goofed up the way we programmed that feature. So we want to go back in time and say, like, okay, let's rewind back. Last week we had maybe a better version
it was
of that.
Working.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can kind of manage that within the team. And so that's a project that I've worked on recently. I've also helped out a client who has kind of a hodgepodge of different email systems that he has sort of acquired over time. And I've helped him recover data from that he thought was, kind of completely lost. And get that so he's able to use it and reconnect with customers that he works with. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know, with IT and technology and all these kind of things, I feel like every week you're hearing about some new data breach or some new hack that these hackers did, and they're holding hostage these kind of things, and a lot of safety practices that might have worked 5-10 years ago, maybe even a year ago, are already outdated. And so and oftentimes, in business, that's can be something we don't think about a lot because, like for me, there's a lot of stuff I need to share with other people. And so, a lot of people know the password to my computer. And, you have things like that. So could you just tell us if you could just pick like your top 3 tips for keeping your data safe? What are some things we might need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I go into those, one thing that you'll be very reassured to know is that all of the top cybersecurity experts in the field will tell you that if you continually do the basics, do the fundamentals, that will put you in a much better place. It's not to say that you will be unhackable,
Right.
because that isn't a thing.
Yeah.
But it means that, practically speaking, you don't really have to worry about it.
Okay.
So I'll get into my top three. So, and the first one I'm going to qualify by saying some people have heard me talking about passwordless systems, which are fantastic.
Yeah.
However, the technology isn't quite there yet.
Okay.
That is something I've been working away feverishly in R&D and hoping to have something for people soon, but it's kind of a goal. So
Right.
what you need right now still is a password manager. Because
Okay.
like you said, you've got that password,
Yeah.
maybe you share it with people in the office, that kind of thing. So we run into a lot of problems because I don't know if you're like me, but I definitely can't remember multiple unique passwords in my head.
Right.
I get to about like 4 or 5 different ones, and then my brain just kind of gives up on
You're
it.
Yeah.
doing a lot better than I am.
Well, and I'll say this, it's just funny. Before we recorded this episode, I was trying to log into something, and I was like, oh my gosh, that password is saved on a different computer. I have no idea what my login information is.
Right. And that actually brings up a good point, too, about the particulars of a password manager, right? So I specifically recommend ones that work on every computer, on every device, your laptop, your desktop, your servers, your
Yeah.
mobile phone, your smartphone, like anywhere you are, your tablet, all of those things, it should work on everything.
Yeah.
Because you're working and you're doing work on all of those devices, so you don't want to be like, oh, I got to go, check out my other device. Okay, no. And we've gotten to a weird place now. So I have to say something, unfortunately, about LastPass, one that I had used in the past quite a bit, and LastPass has had a number of data breaches, and there have been reports that as an organization, they seem uninterested or unable to do what they need to do to make that system secure again. So I feel really weird saying this, because basically people who have used LastPass, you're awesome. You're already doing what people like me have been yelling at so many people to do for so long.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, now I got to change everything. Okay, just throw it out the window, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, no. So it is easy enough to switch over, and definitely contact me. Check out my website's blog, oakcityit.net/blog. Should have some good resources for you on there too.
Yeah.
But so don't use that one. Instead, there's a pretty easy way to tell. So if you can remember your main password to get into the secure vault that holds all your other passwords, if you trust yourself to do that, definitely go with Bitwarden. That's the one that I personally use. I love it. It's awesome. But that is a big if, because if you don't trust yourself to remember that main password, what happens is you lock yourself out, and Bitwarden themselves actually cannot get you back into that.
Oh,
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that is a big concern. So, but there are other ones out there. So you could use something like 1Password or a Dashlane. So absolutely go with one of those. If, if you're a little, concerned about like, okay, well, but if it's something where like you have a locked file cabinet in your office or something, some people do. And, or, you can remember that master password, that kind of thing. Definitely, go with Bitwarden. They've got a fantastic free option, works on all your devices. They've got some other good features that you can purchase for a reasonable price. It's like, I think it's something like $1 a month. It is, you can't afford not to use it.
Right.
Is kind of and to be clear, I'm not paid by Bitwarden. I just really like their service.
Yeah, absolutely.
So kind of rounding out the top 3 suggestions I have. So the other one's kind of related to that. So you've probably used multi-factor login for your bank account or some other things like that.
Yeah.
That's it's done in various different ways, but it tends to be better if you have an authenticator app. So like Google Authenticator, Authy, I think Duo is one of them as well. Get one of those. There's quite a few of those that are just free and available for you. And you can set it up in most accounts. It's going to be different for whatever, but if your web service or app supports it, set it up, use it. It is absolutely worth the extra hassle that you have to go through in entering that little 6-digit code or whatever when you log in. That will do a lot to secure the systems and data that you use. And finally, kind of rounding out the last of these 3 top tips is having data backups. So you're also going to have very different ways that you use data and computer systems. So I can't say like, oh, one size is going to fit all, but you can look at yourself, you can look at your own life, you can look at your business, you can look at how you work. What do you value? So is it something where, okay, I've got a lot of family photos, that sort of thing, and that's really valuable to me in my personal life? Awesome. If it's valuable to you, then it's worth backing up. And a good backup strategy is to have an on-site backup and something that's off-site, so usually in the cloud for that. And like any of these things, so a lot of my business kind of comes around helping people understand and implement some of these things. So like if you have any questions about it, like quick questions, I'm all ears for helping people out. We'll get you sorted on that. If it's something more in depth, we'll look at like, okay, does it make sense for us to have more of a business engagement? But cross that bridge when you get to it, kind of thing.
So a fun story and a caution about the 2-factor authentication. One thing.
Is this with you?
Yeah, this is with me. I ran into a little bit of trouble because I got a new phone, and I was using Google Authenticator to make sure I had that extra layer of security. And I got my new phone set up, and I was so excited about my new phone. And I was like, you know what? I don't need my old phone anymore. And I did reset everything on my old phone.
No.
And guess what? That Google Authenticator was tied to that phone. And so when I opened the app on my new phone, guess what wasn't there? All my 6-digit codes. And so then there was so many websites and places I had to go to log into Facebook, to log into Twitter, to get back into my Gmail, like that I had to go convince these people I was actually who I was, and I was just an idiot that wiped my old phone that had all my old codes on it. So if you do go that route and your phone is what you're using that app on, make sure you transfer that over to a new device before you wipe it off, because I can tell you from experience, it's not fun. So
that is both a really rough story and a great reminder for people out there. A word of caution. Absolutely, get things transferred over.
I could the look of shock on my face when I opened that app and saw nothing was probably priceless.
Oh, wow.
But so that is awesome. And so now, that I'm thinking about IT and even some of the things that we've talked about, like there might be people listening like 2-factor, what Google, what are you talking about? Like when it comes to the IT world, I'm sure that you could talk, for this whole podcast and use words that most people would have no clue what they mean. But this is your business, is you got to convince people, like, hey, I've got these IT solutions for you. So what are some strategies that you use to be able to communicate these really IT specific things to, me?
I'll be honest, I'm not a tech person either. So You could break it down to me too.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, before I go into that, I've got a kind of a related joke here.
Yeah.
So and just kind of a disclaimer that y'all pretty much already made, which is that the tech industry is just absolutely horrid with using so much jargon and acronyms and things like that. It's just it's pretty bad. So definitely get me to answer things or elaborate if needed. And
Right.
when I'm working with people, I always tell them that sort of thing too, because it doesn't do either of us any good if I'm doing something and you're like, what in the world's going on here? I just don't get it. So absolutely. Education is a big part of this, and it's I work with a lot of different clients, and some clients don't need to know everything and don't want to.
Right.
And so that's one thing that I've been trying to work on this year as well, is to be better about knowing when to kind of drill down into more details than
good.
others. And
That's really good.
it's a practice, y'all. I'm still working through it. So anyway, so the joke comes care of Mr. Mack, Carlton McLemore, who was my teacher for the Cisco Networking Academy back in high school at Garner High. So I'm a native from here.
Woohoo!
Shout out to Garner.
Let's go, baby.
Yeah, so go Trojans.
Yeah.
So back in those days, and this was actually a few years ago, I know any of y'all who've seen me, I still look like I'm about half my age, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's not been that long since you were in high school, but yeah, it kind of was. And so anyways, we had, a lot bigger, clunkier laptops that were a lot slower than we have now. And one of the things, like, you didn't have like built-in Wi-Fi or internet kind of stuff. So they had these little expansion slots, it's a little kind of box you could plug in, and you basically would be like, oh, cool, now I can connect online through the cellular network or Wi-Fi or something like that. And what they called those things were PCMCIA. And do you know what that acronym stands for? Do you want to take a guess?
I'm even just trying to remember the letters you just said.
PCMCIA.
Yeah.
You want to take a guess? Go ahead and take a guess.
Say them again.
PC.
Okay, personal computer.
M-I.
It's MCIA.
Excuse me, I'm missing a letter. MCIA.
Personal computer.
I'm thinking CIA like CIA.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Okay, so what is the M? We just got to figure out the M.
Well, I mean, it's not the Central Intelligence Agency.
That's what I was thinking about. I was like, oh yeah, you're thinking
it's the same
personal
letters.
computer,
Yeah.
M.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Personal computer must compute in action.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, so it's here's what it stands for: PCMCIA. People can't memorize computer industry acronyms.
That was far from what we just said. I was with you on the personal computer portion of it, but
I got an F.
So that was that was actually the joke though. So that's not really what it stands for. It's actually Personal Computer Memory Card International Association. But you got at least the first couple
love
of
the
them.
CIA.
I got a 33.
I'm thinking CIA. Go in CIA.
The question about helping people understand tech is really a fantastic question for a good number of reasons. So one of the big reasons is we live in a rapidly changing world. And another big thing there too is that I consider myself, going back to Mr. Mack's class at Garner High and different experiences and training along the way, I consider myself to be pretty well versed in the fundamentals of computing. And what's really great about knowing the fundamentals is no matter how much something changes, the fundamentals don't change. And so that equips me to learn, this new app that just came out this year. If I know how computers operate in general, okay, I take that and I can apply it to the next big thing, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes it a shorter kind of ramp up time.
Right.
And so, I think also in terms of then being able to explain that to other people. So one of the things that I think is really important, and this is outside of tech, right? So this is really just important in life for all of us, is really listening to another person, getting to know them, understand what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, what they care about, and then trying to find ways to relate analogies, imagery that makes sense to them. Because, it can be kind of like explaining something from another world, right?
Right.
So one of the other things about that is Arthur C. Clarke, famous sci-fi novelist, has different kind of axioms that he talks about. And one that's often been quoted is that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And it's just a really fascinating thing to think about. And even I, as someone who does know about some of this technology, a decent bit about it, a lot of things are still actually quite magical to me.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of understanding what you need to understand, right? And being able to help other people see that too. And of course, there's, here's another tech jargon thing that I think might be a little bit easier for y'all to wrap your minds around, because there are analogs in our real world, protocols. Have y'all ever encountered protocols in anything?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely, in your job, you have like protocols, like if X happens, then
Then
Y,
this happens.
So yeah, you definitely want to have those things in place if you're going to run a successful business.
Yeah. Great answer. And so, thinking about that, so in computer networking, for instance, it's very similar what a protocol is. It's just, instead of talking about how business operations are going, how customer relationship is, instead of that, we're talking about, okay, well, how is this computer talking to this other computer with bits and bytes, right?
Yeah.
And so having that understanding of how that works, you can see how all of these more complex apps are built on top of that.
That's good.
That is. So with technology always changing, and it's a constant change. I mean, I feel like technology has evolved since I was
We sat
little.
down to record this.
I mean,
Yes.
that too,
Truth.
But with it always changing, how are you adapting to those changes? Is there like a CE class that you're constantly having to take every single year, like for real estate agents?
Yeah. So, that's a great question. So I think I talked a little bit about the adaptation already, but I would say I'm not in a sort of formal continuing ed requirement, but I'm constantly learning about new things. I think some of that's just kind of my own personality, right? Like I really just enjoy learning about new things. It fascinates me.
The passion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it's kind of, that driving me forward. And then I think not having a curriculum, if you were, that's planned out ahead of time is kind of part of the adaptation as well, because if you think about it, as we're talking here, all these new technologies are being invented and released, and thus, how do I know a year in advance what I'm even supposed to learn? We could have been sitting here having this exact same conversation at this time last year, and I would have said, yeah, AI is probably, it's a thing. It's there,
and now
maybe
look
it's a
at
big
it.
deal. And now look at it right now. I mean, it's just
Blown up.
crazy. Yeah. So
It's and I guess to go towards the AI situation, it's really cool.
yeah, it
I'll
is.
be very frank. It's really cool.
It's super cool. It's also nightmare fuel. So, it kind of depends on which way you look at it.
Right.
But, that's also a thing that, so a lot of what I'm talking about, there's so many, kind of comparisons to things that are in general in life, in the economy and all of that. And so, I think a lot of things, you can look at, a downturn in the market as such an awful problem. But, people are always buying and selling, which means that a downturn for some is actually an opportunity for others, right?
Right.
Oh, that's good. That's a good nugget to jot down.
That is.
Downturn for some is an opportunity for others. I need my pencil and paper, I'm telling you. I like it. I like it a lot. So I guess I'll start. I mean, unless you want to, Nick. This is kind of your portion, and then I swing in with the
You're
end.
driving the boat now.
Oh, okay. So, so Alan, we actually ask 2 important questions for all of our viewers or guests on the show, and because our viewers want to know, they got to know. So, the question for you is, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Yeah. So mine is one that I'm going to credit my parents for because I know for a fact that they have told me this. But I've heard it from a lot of other people as well. And it's a fantastic thing that all of you can use. And it's just wonderful. Writing handwritten thank you notes.
That's good.
Y'all better clap for the people in the back. I'm telling you. That right there, Alan, superb.
And I can tell you for a fact, I have actually either gotten more business or it's helped in both the side of customer satisfaction. And I think having gratitude is one of those things that really helps us as individuals, right?
Yes.
It helps us see and appreciate and not take for granted the people in our lives, the things that we have, opportunities that we may have. And it reframes a lot of things, right? So you start to focus more on, oh, you know what? I'm blessed to be able to do this work.
Yeah.
And it's just a really great mentality to be that way. And, I can tell you one of my previous really big kind of long-term clients, basically after interviewing with their team it's kind of weird because I was sort of basically treated as a part of their team, although I was contracting through my own company.
Right.
But after doing that, I wrote a handwritten thank you note. And, when I would go into her office, I'd look up on her bulletin board, and what did I see posted up there but my note?
Yeah.
And it's something that really means something to people. You take, and it seems like a lot of time you're taking out of your day, but it's not.
No. Yeah. And it's almost like a lost art, and to the point of where it's almost rare. And like, speaking of that, I remember there was a job I interviewed for, and just after the interview, I wrote the 2 people that were in the interview a card, and thank you for interviewing me. And I ended up getting the job, and they told me, they're like, you're the only person like that wrote us, like, period. But they're like, but we were just like blown away that you took the time to handwrite something. And so it's practiced so little now that when you do it, you will absolutely stand apart.
Absolutely. I was like, I had it for a client of mine, and I love a good handwritten note. I don't get them often, but I do like giving them. And it was one of those moments where that person just came back and was like, man, your card. And I was like, oh man, what happened? I'm thinking bad handwriting. That was going through my mind. It wasn't the bad handwriting. It was the fact that it was so personable to her that she was like, it literally made me cry. I said,
that's awesome.
Talk about a powerful statement. So I was like, I got to keep going. I was like, as much as I do not like them personally, to do them, I was like, because I'm telling you, if I can get a stamp that just had it all written out for me, best thing in the world.
So, it's good, and it also kind of goes the opposite direction, and then it takes away that extra bit of, it's practicing our humanity, right?
Yes.
I think I'm kind of keenly aware of how a lot of us are becoming more, digital natives and, entwined in our technology and that. But taking back our humanity is important.
I'm going to steal the boat back, and I'm going to ask your typical question. So the one we're going to come in for a landing, and I'm going to have to make sure I got the wording down because I never have to say this, but what is one thing that you utilize every day to help better yourself?
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at you guys earlier that I'm going to take this from left field, or in this case, actually my backyard. And it is a compost bin.
All right. Do tell.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, with Earth Day coming up, this is
Yes.
April that we're recording, and
Yes.
so with that coming up, we we're thinking about things about our planet and how we enjoy it and appreciate it, and composting is something I started several years ago. I can't remember the exact time frame. Wake County was actually doing some sort of deal. It was like 40% off this compost bin or something like that. But it's really nice because it's actually super easy to do, and it is a real way to get outside, get out in nature, which are again pretty important for me, being someone stuck behind a computer a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it kind of encourages me to do that, and it's also an interesting thing too, because it's a thing that has dietary implications, and it gets you thinking about what you're eating, and I think it's good to be aware of it too. You may not be doing a diet actively right now,
Right.
but being aware of it is super helpful, right?
Yeah.
And so, basically like all this, fresh produce and stuff you can get, there's a lot of it, that you don't eat. Even if you eat all of the edible part of what you got, you still got your peels and, the rind and, shucks, or, all those kind of things that aren't, generally consumed by people. And so you can put those into the compost bin, and it just kind of works its magic. And after a while, what happens is you actually get fertile soil.
Yeah.
And so then it kind of feeds into another naturalist kind of hobby that I've taken on, which is doing a little bit of gardening. I'm not like, I'm no big green thumb kind of person here, so don't think I'm crazy on that.
So we can't invite you back to talk to us about gardening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you might have a
probably
couple.
not. I may have something to say. We'll see. But yeah, so I've done some things like tomatoes or bell peppers or some herbs or things like that. And it's nice too, because like some of those tomatoes that I've grown, some years it's like, okay, well that didn't work very well at all. But when they yield some tomatoes, those are juicy, really good tomatoes, like some of the most delicious ones I've had. And it's certainly a lot better than like, I don't know how y'all's yards are or whatever, but like a lot of people around here, I've got a lot of that kind of red clay there. And yeah, good luck growing anything in that. But you take the fertile soil that you've made from composting, and it's like, oh, cool, grow something with that.
That's awesome.
That's
Man,
so neat.
I love that answer. And that's what is so cool about asking these questions to all our
You
guests,
never know what you're gonna
because
get.
you get the coolest answers. Like that would have never guessed. And I
Come
love
from
that.
an IT guy,
Yeah, and that's such a cool way to be intentional of like, hey, I'm sitting at a desk for most of my job, so
Get
like I want to
outside.
make sure I get outside, and so I've got these hobbies that I've started, and one that is helping sustain and make our earth a better place, that we can be here longer. Man, that's awesome. So Alan, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a delight to have you on the podcast. And so we'll throw your contact information in the show notes. So if you are like, man, I really need to know a little bit more about this, or I need some help with my IT stuff, or I need to make my stuff more secure, Alan is the guy to go talk to. So check out his information in the show notes. And as always, please rate, review, subscribe. Help us get out to more people. Those algorithms love it when people are loving what we're doing. So please go do that for us, just to show your appreciation to listen to the show. And we will talk to you guys next time.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You remember that? Growing up in school? First is the worst, second is the best, third is the one with the hairy chest,
Okay, I do. Yeah.
fourth is the one with the treasure chest.
Huh. I missed that one.
Yeah. I don't think we did I don't think I did the treasure chest, but I remember the hairy chest.
Where did you go with one number 4? It just stopped?
I think we just stopped.
You
at
just
three.
stopped at 3?
I mean,